with a card printer and is sitting in his car. Oh my God, we've had the same IT company for 10 years and they've never talked to us about this. Found that the guy behind the clerk behind the door, behind the desk was actually in on it with a partner who was sitting in a parked car behind the station. Camera, there's always cameras on the POS systems and you don't know who's watching. They laid them out on the counter and said, what do you know about this? Because this guy came in and warned you, you don't seem very interested about it. Of some of the things, how they're getting in, what they're getting in. We're going to talk about a couple of real world scenarios that happened right here in Houston just recently, and we were talking about one earlier today, happened to a high-end restaurant here in Houston. They were able to catch it before it got too bad, but we're going to talk about one with an attorney firm where it actually got in and encrypted 4 terabytes of data inside of 4 hours. The IT people caught it. They called us, we got in, we had it cleaned out in that day, but they were down for a day as they had to restore things from backup. Luckily, they didn't copy anything out yet. They had just gotten to the point where they locked people out and they were working in the background. This set of hackers, instead of, most hackers will make themselves copy before they make themselves known. This group wasn't so smart. They actually made themselves known. And it was probably because the software, they got discovered ahead of time before they could fully execute. And so they were trying to execute in the background, and they were able to stop the copy part of that procedure. So it helped them a lot in that sense. Going on with this, 3 parts. We're going to be talking about State of the Union, ways they get in. We're going to talk about how cell phones are these little things right here are really playing into how how people are getting in. These are basically the keys to the kingdom. And there's a lot of stuff sneaking in through cell phones a lot of people aren't aware of. And then we're just going to give some kind of real world examples of what's happening, and then also some things to look out for, basic tips on how to detect phishing, which is 9 out of 10 breaches right now originate from email phishing. And that's the truth. The other part of it, is usually network hacks, a combination of maybe something driven from downloadables. It all originates from the internet in some way, shape, or form, but email phishing is still one of the largest concerns. And the reason is because of lack of user training. People don't know how to recognize it. They don't recognize legitimate emails. They click on things they shouldn't, or maybe they do recognize, but they're just too busy not paying attention that they do something they shouldn't have, and they end up, it only takes one person to compromise that network. And as the people with Okta and some of the stuff we're going to talk about some actual real things that happen. So let's go ahead and get started. This is, we updated some 2022 data, and this is just a kind of a representation of number of attacks versus remediation costs. And by the way, these numbers are in the thousands, okay? So number of attacks, remediation costs, and then that linear climb. And the thing you're going to see, 2022, 21 and 22 were big years for hackers. 2022 especially, because not only did we see the number of attacks increase by 663%, but we saw the actual remediation costs come within $1 million average for the first time. They're projecting this number. I'm going to show you guys some figures that you're just going to go, wow. They're projecting by 2027 that worldwide losses from hackers are going to get into the trillions worldwide by 2027. So, and if you're wondering, a lot of people wonder why this happens, it's a business, okay? So we had, back when 18 is when we really started to see ransomware really start to emerge in a big way. It was actually out prior, but we really started to see it take off. We had about 177,000 attacks in 18, but the average remediation cost was actually around $6,000 to $7,000, okay? So it was way down here. They really hadn't gotten it perfected yet. And it was mainly where they were locking people out, and they were charging people to get the key to get back in. People were able to decrypt keys, found ways around it. And so this started to level out. We saw hacks go down. This was hackers kind of learning a little bit. We saw the number of attacks go down, but we saw costs go up because they started attacking bigger targets. So the targets that they were successful against actually paid more money to get out. That's why the costs went up for average remediation. Now, in 2020, we started to see a double-edged sword emerge. It wasn't just about locking people out. It was copying the information prior to that. So they would be camping out in your network for anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks, finding out how best to hurt you, and then making themselves known by locking your data out. So that way, if you didn't pay them, they could threaten to release the information. And now you've got a whole nother set of circumstances that comes into play. You have liability, third-party liability, possibly compliance fines with HIPAA or PCI. A lot of other things come in, not only privacy issues and loss of confidence from your consumer or from your customers. So there's all sorts of other things that play in on that if it's released. Third-party lawsuits become a real thing. I guarantee you there was a lot of, and a lot of people don't know this, but when SolarWinds got hacked, SolarWinds is a company that provides services to people like us as an MSP. Ken, I know you know about SolarWinds. Sure. And as a result, Microsoft was hacked because of the data retrieved from that. Also, many government agencies, they are under government inquiry right now. Just in the last month, they have been in Senate oversight for downplaying the significance of the role they played in that hack. And so there are serious consequences to leaking access to somebody else's systems. Third-party liability is
against some of the officers, the CEO, and I think the CFO of SolarWinds are facing federal criminal charges.
Yep. More and more, it's becoming that the people responsible for maintaining these networks are becoming liable. So we have to be very careful of what we do. And I can tell you as a professional, Ken, Fred, I know you guys Susie, I don't know where do you come from, the IT side, or are you from, what business are you in? My point is that we're becoming responsible for these things, but a lot of times customers are the hardest people to work with because they want convenience, not security. How many times have you been told to loosen something up because it's not convenient for the CEO? And they sign the check, so they think that what they know is best. And so most time customers are our biggest problems. They getting them to see past their own egos is probably one of the hardest things we have to deal with. So as you can see, these numbers really climb. Now, in 2021. What we started to see was what we call RAS, ransomware as a service. That means that these guys are now getting organized. They're operating like companies. I don't know how many of you have ever seen those videos of these guys that go after hackers and they actually hack the hackers and they show the videos of the guys in India, and it's like a business. There's 8 or 10 of them sitting around a room, and they're actually just going in and they're actually calling people, pretending to be Microsoft and getting their stuff. This is in other countries like India, Pakistan, North Korea, China. These are businesses, and they're purposely ran because they know they can make money by doing this. The ransomware as a service is a little different, though. What they have done is become an outlet for people like, let's say, a disenchanted employee. Let's say you've been working for a company for 10 years, you've just been laid off, but you just happen to know the administrator's password because you've seen him put it in front of you a couple of times. Well, now this guy can contact this group and say, hey, I've got administrative access into so-and-so's networks, and they're a $500 million company. Oh, okay. Well, they'll take a portion, they'll go do the work and put their network assets at work for a portion of that and carry it out as a job, as a professional job. They'll put their assets, their thousands of bots and endpoints to work at doing this. And these hackers work for these organizations like a salary or commission. I mean, it's basically they're organized. Wow. It is absolutely crazy. And we call it ransomware as a service. And so for a piece of the pie, they will go out and actually execute the attack on behalf of the disgruntled employee.
Mafia movie.
This is probably more along the lines of, we don't know for sure, but there's rumor for some of the guys in MGM that they believe that that's how some of the stuff happened with Okta. Somebody disenchanted with Okta got in, administrator, and then that's what precipitated the attacks on MGM and Caesars. That's at least what we're hearing on the backside. We know 2 guys that work for MGM over there, and we're dealing with that. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a second. So going on, this is some of the new stuff that just came out of Statista. And this is talking about, remember I talked about phishing? Look at the number one costliest way that they get in for cybercrime. Business email compromise, way up there at the top over anybody else. The other thing we're seeing is investment fraud. The thing you're seeing a rise on lately, especially in the minor side of it, is sextortion. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, some people, a lot of us probably already know, but that's where they basically go in and they send out millions of emails at a time, and they basically say, hey, we got pictures of you doing something on your camera, on your webcam you shouldn't have, and we're going to release it to your friends. Well, obviously they don't. They send it out in the millions hoping to play on somebody's conscience, and they actually do get quite a few people to bite on that. That is on the rise. And in fact, one of the things we did in our company this year is we released a family series for cyber education for families and parents, because last year there were over 7,000 documented attacks on minors for sextortion, leading to 16 suicides that we know of. One of them was very national. It was actually about 3 months ago. If you guys remember seeing in the news, the football player, he was like a senior in high school, got blackmailed by some Nigerian group out of through Instagram, where they got him to send pictures of himself, posing as a girl, thinking he was talking to a girl on the other side. It was actually a hacker group, and then they blackmailed him back for $1,000, telling him they were going to send his pictures out to all his family and his friends and everything, and he had a full ride to college. Well, devastated by it, and you can look this up. This is actually a real news item. This really happened. It made national news about 2 months ago, 3 months ago, maybe. Anyway, he ended up paying part of it, couldn't pay it, told the hackers, don't do it, you'll ruin my life. He said, I'll kill myself before I let that happen. And the hackers actually texted him back and said, go ahead. You're going to wish you were dead by the time we were done with you anyway. Kid killed himself. Family lost a kid, had no idea this was happening. Luckily, the FBI was able to trace it back. They were able to capture the 3 guys that were behind this. They charged them with murder. Doesn't bring back the kid. Doesn't help the family. Okay? These things are real. They're happening, and they're on the rise. So this is something that's happening, and I just thought I'd share these 2 statistics with you guys. This is the other one that's very alarming. This is projection of worldwide. This isn't, by the way, these numbers are in the trillions, okay? Trillions. These are projections worldwide up to 2027, and what they project cybercrime is going to cost the U.S. I'm not talking about cyber worldwide crime in U.S. dollars. This is the U.S. dollar value of what it's going to cost the world by 2027. These are big numbers. These are really, really big numbers. And it's much worse than a lot of people think. Now, one of the things we talk to people about is how do you prevent? This was actually came out of one of our groups that does cybersecurity. They were doing a questionnaire among MSPs about what are the most common ways to stop, what gets through what levels, and combining things and how it reduced risk. Now, you can't probably read some of this, so I'm going to talk. This top one, this blue bar, is typical antivirus software. Most people don't realize that typical antivirus, 94% of it does absolutely zero to prevent anything. It's just the way the threats come in now, it absolutely prevents almost nothing. All right. Now, combining that with email and spam filters, which Microsoft, Gmail, getting a little bit better about. Microsoft's been, I think, better than Gmail about this. Google, and I'm talking about both on the commercial side. It reduces that risk down to about 73%. Patched, updated applications and software on the system side reduces it even further down to about 64%. The big thing that they saw in combination with all these things were ad blocking software, pop-up blocking, which is now pretty common in most browsers, and cybersecurity training. All of these things combined reduce the risk from 94% down to 12%. That's a big reduction, but it's a multitude of things. The lesson here is that it takes more than one thing it takes a strategy of multiple tactics to really prevent cybercrime. It's not just one thing. So you have to be exercising training policies like MFA, that's multi-factor authentication. You have to be exercising spam and email filtering to the maximum you can. And if you're relying on endpoint protection is a very small part of it in itself. And without actual security professional intervention, and what I mean by that is SOC, what we call Security Operations Center monitoring, you're probably not going to find that very effective at preventing anything. A lot of people think that Dropbox and Office 365, G Suite, these things this is 2017 data. We haven't seen a whole lot of change in the percentages on this, so I still use this graph. I'll update it when it's significantly more, but what we're finding is now, those of you know Dropbox, probably one of the most popular file sharing programs. And I want to specify this term because a lot of people, and I'm doing this for the benefit of not just you guys, but the people who are going to watch this later. Dropbox is not a backup program, guys, even though Office 365 and OneDrive and Dropbox is trying to pretend to be backup. Anything that is connected to your drive in real time and can make real-time updates to the offsite program or storage location is not a backup. A backup in the IT side of things is something that is isolated. It comes in, it grabs a snapshot, it disconnects, regardless of whether it's local or it's cloud-based. It is coming in and snapshotting that data at that time, sending it somewhere, and it is not accessible. It's what we call persistent storage. It's inaccessible by the hacker at that point. In other words, it can't be touched.
Media still.
I'm sorry?
Media still. Media. Old days, used to carry around your disk to home. I took these big 5 megabyte platters. They were this big. I took them home every time I did backups.
Yeah, that's a little impractical now as the data is getting a lot larger, and it takes. I mean, people are dealing with terabytes of data now, and backing up that kind of data and having to carry it around. There's inherent risks.
Physical data. I'll still do it. Physical data, man. I will still practice that. Seriously.
What we teach people is it's good to have a local and a cloud, and either one should be persistent. They should not be attached to the system at all times. In other words, they should not be live file systems that can be infiltrated by a hacker.
Yes, sir. I need to find a word correctly that can describe this hybrid situation. I'm a CEO. I want physical backups. Yes, we'll do a hybrid with the cloud and other ways of backups that are supported by very good packages selected by many good people that know how to shop this stuff.
The term that you should be looking for when you're looking for backup should be the term persistent storage. Persistent means that it is basically it can't be changed or deleted or messed with by a third party without proper authentication and outside of the normal system. It's not like I can just go in there and delete that data set. There's protections put in place that require additional permissions by the administrators, separate and outside of the actual operating system, usually through a third party, in order to do any kind of deletion or any kind of recovery. And that's what's really important. Persistent storage is something that is very important to have in your backup system. And a lot of people don't wear it. And also another thing that people don't do is they do not back up or verify their data. For instance, when we back up virtual machines, we do verification through test firing. In other words, once we've got a copy of that data offsite, our software will actually test fire it up and get a boot screen. We make sure that is a bootable, usable image before we say that's a good backup.
Okay.
And that right there is huge. You can number of people that find out that their backup isn't any good at the wrong time, like they've just lost a bunch of data. They went in and they look and they thought they had automated backup, and then they find out, oh wow, my backup hasn't ran in 2 months because nobody paid any attention to it. Nobody checked it. Nobody verified it. Oh, well, it ran, but then they go to try and restore it and it fails because the backup data was never verified. So part of good backup is verifying and testing. And I would say that based on what we've seen, around 70% of firms don't do any of that. They just rely on the software to do its job, and they don't really do any independent verification of that. And that's sad. There's ways to do that are automated, but there's always should be at least once a month where someone goes in and does a test restore to see if that data is actually good. That's just good, kind of good common practice. The reason why this graph is important is because Dropbox has been hacked 5 times in its existence. Okay. Office 365 is constantly under attack. Their system has not really fully been infiltrated. People have gotten into parts, Azure, parts of Office 365, parts of Exchange. They haven't had a full kind of unrecoverable breach like Dropbox has or Google has. There's really not enough people using Box, but you do Salesforce in here because even SaaS programs like Salesforce and even Zoho, which we're a big fan of Zoho, but even Zoho has had their fun. They own some IT related IP, and they've had issues on that side. So there is nobody safe from this, and so you can't. What we emphasize here is don't rely on these services if you think they're backup. These are file sharing programs. And one of the hacks we're going to talk about today with the attorney firm actually happened through Dropbox. Dropbox is what spread it into the company from a partner's home. And I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So we're going to talk about how hackers get in. There's 4 ways hackers get in that are very common. We see phishing emails, obviously one of the most popular, 9 out of 10. Clickbait pop-ups. We've all seen these. We've seen the pop-ups that imitate, oh, I'm McAfee and I found a click here to get rid of this virus because your computer's infected. It's a little pop-up window that will occur down in the bottom corner of your screen. But in reality, what that really is you can see it because it usually almost always says it right above it. It'll say Google Chrome or Microsoft Edge. It's basically a browser pop-up window it's notification driven. And you can usually use a Control-Alt-Delete, just kill the browser, and it will kill those things. Those are usually zero-day exploits where they're exploiting a vulnerability inside the browser itself, hit an infected website, and it is exploiting those zero-day vulnerabilities. For those who don't know, and I know you guys probably know, but for those of you who don't know, at any given time, there's anywhere from 30 to 40 what we call zero-day bugs that are open in Edge or Google or Microsoft and in their operating systems. Even Apple and Linux has the same problem. All these operating systems have the same issues in the fact that there are bugs that they know about. They don't advertise them because that's why they call them zero-day exploits. There's no known fix for it. So they are trying to actively fix things. And what you will see, you'll occasionally see, like in a Microsoft update, you'll see that this update fixes 5 zero-day exploits. That means they found fixes for those things that were unfixable before, and they're now releasing patches to fix those things. But as time goes on, there's always anywhere from 30 to 40 open zero-day bugs in any operating system. And just a little fact here, there is ransomware, almost all of it now is operating system agnostic. What I mean by that is that ransomware operates on Mac, Linux, and Windows without caring what it runs on. And it uses the native libraries within those things for encryption and things to do what it does. Most people are not aware that, I'm an avid Linux, I'm a Linux fan, okay? So I've got many Linux systems. I run Windows for professional, like you're seeing here, because that's what all our clients use. But personally, I use Linux. They can execute on Linux now just as easily as they can on Windows or Mac or anything else. And the attacks on Macs are up 880% over last year. So, and that's because most Mac users think they're safe. Most Mac users think I'm using a Mac, so they can't hurt me. That is the worst thing to assume, and it will probably get you into trouble. Each one is written for different programs, but REvil or Revil, a lot of people call them one of the biggest groups. They have their stuff is operating system agnostic. It works on everything. A lot of people don't realize Linux powers 85% of the internet. The servers that serve up these websites and things, and that's what they target, is infecting websites through those back ends. That's the majority of what they go over. But they're starting to go after desktops now. So
what's your favorite flavor?
Mine, I actually, believe it or not, it depends on who it's for. Okay. For me, I'm a Ubuntu Debian fan only because it has the biggest compliance with applications with
Yeah.
Microsoft and stuff like that. Like I can use Teams and OneDrive and things like that with it that I use in the Windows world, and it works just fine.
I've seen enough samples. Yes.
But Linux Mint is another Debian Ubuntu based, and that is very friendly. I did an article about that where I recorded the whole session in it. It's a great user-friendly one for beginners who are used to Windows, want to stick with something that feels like Windows, and it works. It's safe and it works extremely well. And there's a huge base of software out there for the person to use.
I read in college, very early 80s, a book, Unix for Everyone.
Well, Unix is trying to make its own version like Ghost, and there's some versions of BSD out there. They're just not very hardware friendly. So they don't have the hardware support that Linux.
I started out on version 8, AT&T. I was a VAR. So I enjoyed writing software modifications to a 4GL package called Kinetics with a C. Stuck with them. I migrated from a 3B 400, 3B2 to 86 and got the updates for that. And it was very good. I love the sandbox. So when that era ended, I went into corporate IT. So I'm going to look into the Ubuntu. And I just want to set up a sandbox, see what I can do with it.
Yeah, no, it's actually the best thing to do is I would set up a virtual environment, and then you can run some different things. You can get VMware for free and run a free VM server, and then you can run different versions of things and kind of try out your flavors. When I do testing, we do a lot of that. So getting back to this, URL phishing, Google results are a big way. You're starting to see more hackers buy Google ads. So a lot of people don't realize when you are looking at a Google page, you're looking at the layout of what they show you. That usually on the right side, they have, like, if I'm searching for an IT company and I put in that name and I will find what comes closest to me, they'll try and line something up with me and show me a business over here. Usually maybe somebody that's paid to be in there. Then on the other side, you have this other one that they're showing you paid results. And if you look, it says sponsored by, but the first 5 results of those are usually paid results. Well, and then the actual search results start below that. Now, the reason why we tell people this is because they don't realize that hackers are now buying those ads. Hackers are going in and buying keywords for things that they feel people are going to use, and they're using those to guide them to infected websites. And we're seeing more and more of this. This has become a growing trend. And then they hit that website, it immediately looks for exploits, and before they know it, they've actually they can use a file what we call a fileless execution to download a payload. And at that point, they're in trouble. So
the redirection is awful. It's getting worse.
It is. And so there's a lot of things you have to do to protect yourself. Now, also, so why is this happening? This is how they get in. Users being busy or distracted. The phishing programs being very realistic, which a lot of them are. But we're going to talk about easy ways to recognize those today. Maybe they get an email from a friend, but it's an unusual attachment, like a Word file or a spreadsheet, something they wouldn't usually. And out of curiosity, they open it, but it's because their friend's account got hacked. The pop-up lookalikes we just talked about. Clicking these things, any of these things, usually will result in a browser exploit happening, finding an out-of-date update in the system that it can exploit. Unpatched software, something in Adobe, something in Edge, something in Office, and then just having purely ineffective edge protection, or what we call endpoint protection, that just can't even, like McAfee, Norton, that can't even do a good job of really detecting real threats. So those usually would end people in trouble and cause the hacker to be the endpoint. The other thing we're going to talk about is phones. And I bring this up because more and more, we just did an article on this last month, and that is that phones are becoming one of the number one ways they're getting in. And one of the things we're seeing that FBI brought to our attention about 6 months ago is that they are finding hackers that are actually going out and putting these QR codes out in restaurants and movie theaters. They will go into a movie theater chain or a restaurant chain, and they'll get their QR codes, and they will basically find where it directs to. They will go make up their own labels and come back and paste their label over the top of the existing one. So what happens is when you go in and scan this to pull up a menu, it actually pulls it up, loads a piece of malware onto your phone, and then goes on to the site. You have no idea that something's even going on in the background. You've infected your device. They're seeing a growing trend with this happen in retail stores, restaurants, movie theaters, public spaces where they can hit large chains that are easy to get to.
I was just saying, parking meters are also a common place for those phony QR codes now.
Yep. Yeah, this is becoming a big thing, and FBI has been notifying us to warn people about what they're scanning and be absolutely certain that what they're scanning is legitimate. A lot of people, especially youth, use these in order to just, they'll go happy with these things. They see, well, oh, wow, now I don't have to type it. And for a guy like me who has big fingers, I hate typing stuff in, but I really don't use my bar scanner for anything. But you're starting to see these or not starting, but they've been around in commercials. We see people on Netflix, things like that, advertising them in commercials and stuff like that. So we try to teach people just to be aware of what it is you're scanning, because this right here, people don't realize there are 20 times more devices like phones and tablets than there are actual computers. Millions and millions more. And they make up a huge, what we call the Internet of Things. These devices are becoming more and more the targets of hackers. Other devices we're seeing are cameras at home, especially if you're buying them from Amazon and there's some, cheap Amazon from China camera for your house. Don't know how much trust I'd put in that. Thumb drives are another thing. Ordering like a bulk of thumb drives through Amazon, which you've seen people do. Stick with trusted vendors, trusted brands. Make sure they're sealed containers when they get in, because they're hiding viruses and malware inside those thumb drives. So when you load them up, they just instantly start loading stuff. There's all sorts of weird, crazy methods that things are happening, and we have to be very vigilant. Now, one of the things I wanted to bring is just some example. I told somebody, hey, well, show us an example. What's a legitimate email versus an illegitimate email? What's the quickest way to see it? To me, it's this part right here. It's this, who it's from. So this is a legitimate email from the Home Depot. And the way I can tell is because I can look at this email header and see this came from homedepot.com. I'm looking at this last part right here, the .com part. This is their domain. This is a subdomain. It is their server, but the main domain is Home Depot. So I know this is coming from them. They can't fake this part. Now, and it's only addressed to my legitimate email address. I'm not seeing a bunch of twos and other things. It is straight to me and only to me. Okay. So to me, when I look at this is a legitimate email, and this is a great way to recognize it. A great way to tell between one that's not. This also, and I brought this in mainly because Google Play, this is like to confirm a purchase from Google Play. Again, it's a no reply address, but it is from google.com. Everything in here and is legitimate. And the way to test to see if another way to test is to hold your mouse over any of the links. Don't click on it, just hold your mouse over. And a lot of devices now, it will preview or it will actually show you the link location. If it is going to something other than the domain for the thing that is being advertised, delete it. It is usually a phishing email. Sometimes these companies will use legitimate advertising companies that do redirection for marketing. I still don't click those. If there's something I need to see that I'm not sure about, I'll just go to that company's website. Like my bank, if I get a notice that's from my bank, then I will go to my bank. I'm not going to use the links in that email to go do it. I'm going to use my own app on my own phone or something else, but I'm not going to use the links within that email. So now that I've given two examples of legitimate email, let's just look at something that isn't. Do you guys remember when this is a big deal, the Leguine suite for the contaminated drinking water? Okay. So this is one of the illegitimate ones that went in. There's two things that you can tell. One, look at the address. I've got some address at some crazy Roadrunner address up here that obviously is not legitimate, or Gmail, or it's usually some offshoot of something that is not absolutely what it is. And you can tell this is obviously illegitimate. A lot of people just don't even look at this, but they need to. This tells you where it's coming from. The second thing is I got an attachment that's an HTML file.
You're telling me if I opt in, all right? So you start noticing that. No, goodbye. So there's nothing out there that can be that intelligent to tell you you're not going into a site that can opt you in only if you want to opt in. This is the main site. That should be guaranteed if you're going to campaign for this. I think it's wonderful.
I'm going to tell you, there's no such thing as legitimate anymore when it comes to email about opting in or opting out. They will use opt-outs and opt-ins in order to verify that you got a legitimate email address so they can start sell your
Right.
email address to other people. It's
a pain
absolutely
in the
crazy.
It's a pain in the neck. Time
So,
consuming. It's not customer service friendly.
so this
The way-
right here, this HTML file, this is a script. If I was to open this, this would infect my computer. It would open up a page that would run scripts, and it would either do one of two things. It would actually inject code into my system, into my memory, and start downloading payloads, or it would direct me to a page that wants to steal my credentials. A lot of people don't realize that there's scripts that can steal your stored credentials right out of the browser now. I mean, I don't know about you, but I store passwords in Google in my browser. Most people do. But I use a different browser profile for my personal banking stuff and the things that I do in my personal life than I do for my business. I separate my profiles so that way if a series if something does happen to one side, it doesn't affect the other. And you can do that using profiles within your browser. So I just wanted to give a couple of examples. Here's another one. This is an ADT page. There's three signs in this that are really bad. One is this is just a completely malformed, crappy email address. And they also sent it to variants of my email address in the CC and a 2 that don't even exist. So this is obviously sent out by probably millions of these went out. And then the third tall tale sign, I again have an HTML attachment. So there's 3 tall tale signs, and this made it past Google. Okay, Google did not flag this. That's scary to me because this has all the telltale signs of phishing, but Google did not catch it. So
really is to it.
yeah, this is the kind of stuff that's happening. So I just wanted to illustrate the bit. If you can go by just those guidelines, you will recognize most phishing right out of the bat. That's what I wanted to share with you guys for today. But there is one last thing I want to share that's really important, and that is that all the stuff I'm going to talk about 2 real world examples that happened here in Houston. Okay, one of them was a law firm, 50 people. One of the partners who runs Macs at home. He's a big Mac guy, but he runs PCs at the office. He has a Dropbox at home that he uses to share files between his office computer and his home computer. Well, he got a PDF from somebody he trusted, opened it up on his Mac, nothing happened. He worked on it and he looked at it and printed it. Then he copied that to his Dropbox. His secretary opened it up out of the Dropbox he shares with the secretary, infected her computer. That in turn infected his computer through Dropbox at his office. They infected 2 computers at his office from his home Dropbox. And within 4 hours, they encrypted almost 8 terabytes of data. That all happened within 1 day. Okay. Now they were able to take it off. They were able to take those machines offline, stop them from spreading anywhere else. And we were able to remediate it and take it out of the system. And no ransom happened, nothing like that. They got locked out of those 2 computers, but not out of the server, not anything else. We were able to restore the server in a few hours from a backup. So no real damage, but it goes to show you that you have to exercise zero trust with systems. Just because it's a Mac doesn't mean it's safe. Just because you open it on one system doesn't mean it's safe on another. It just means that the malware on it wasn't written for a Mac. It was written for Windows. And you have to exercise zero trust with something. And it turned out it was something from somebody who normally doesn't send them attachments, but he opened it out of curiosity. That's what we found out so part of our job as experts is not just to find and remediate problems and prevent them. It's to find out how they got there, to do some detective work, find out how they got in, and then patch that hole, stop that from happening again, educate people about what happened and stop it from coming and happening again. So it's very important in what we do. The other one was about the restaurant I told you about here in City Center. It was a high-end restaurant that actually one of my favorites now. I go there all the time. I happened to discover it as a result of him becoming a client. We were asked to come in and remediate the problem. They opened a loan amortization spreadsheet that they downloaded off the internet. It infected that computer, downloaded what we call a RAT, a remote access Trojan, which allowed them to install software on the machine, which they installed TeamViewer, a legitimate program, and then we're able to capture the password and ID for that, and then use that as a legitimate way to get into the machine. And so they were actually in the machine when we were remediating. We came in to remediate this client, take care of they got locked out of their own email through Office. We had to clean that. By the time we got into this and discovered how they got in and everything, we actually caught them in the TeamViewer instance trying to copy QuickBook data. And we were able to actually kick them out, take the system offline, kick them out, pull the software off. And then our software, the software we use two different types of software that are enterprise level product. And one is called Deep Instinct and another is called Cynet. It's a company out of Israel. And a lot of Israel and the US have a huge background in, for those of us who know, have a huge background in our CIA and Israel actually have a huge cybersecurity background, I should say cyber attack background, with some of the Iran intervention and stuff like that back when they were still trying to attain nuclear weapons, even now. But a lot of our prevention was cyber, and it was being done out of Israel through cooperation with the CIA. There's actually a lot of specials that talk about it, but some very good talent there. But so we use enterprise level product, and what it does is it goes back into our SOC. So we don't let the user touch anything. It'll come up and tell the user, hey, we found something and we're handling it. This is what we found and we're taking care of it. We say whether it's a low, medium, or high level threat. And then our SOC is notified. So our solution comes with 24/7 SOC, people that actually watching it. They're cybersecurity experts trained to look at it. They analyze that threat, see if it's real or not, whether it should be done. And then we upload that and we use artificial intelligence at the endpoint to do that. So we have a 99.5% capture rate in real time on 0-day exploits, which means that with a 0.1% false positive ratio. So that means we're capturing that stuff in real time, stopping it, isolating it without making the machine unusable. And then it's being thrown back to a cybersecurity analyst to look at it within minutes to go, yep, that's good, that's bad. And we blacklist the process based on its certificate, its signature, its location. And then that is uploaded to a cloud database that actually protects every system in our cloud base globally. So it doesn't matter whether we find a threat here in Texas or we find a threat in South America, or we find a threat in the UK. The moment that threat is found, reported, whitelisted in the database, every system we protect globally is protected by from that same threat. So that's how we remediate. And the software companies, the insurance companies like what we're doing so much that every service we offer with 5 endpoints or more comes with a $1 million cybersecurity policy behind it. Now, the reason why this is really important is because cybersecurity insurance is something that's very tricky. A lot of people, so if you were to go out as a company, a 10-person, let's say I got a 10-person company and I want to go buy cybersecurity insurance, and I go out and say, okay, I want to go buy a policy for my company. First thing they're going to ask you is, well, have you ever been breached? Have you ever had an incident? If you ever had an incident, you are instantly disqualified. They won't cover you because what that says is you're a bad risk. Okay, so you won't get it. Number two, it's going to be very expensive because they're losing their butts. It's going to cost you anywhere from, for a small company like that, from $3,600 to $7,200 a year, depending on what vertical you're in. You know, if you're in the insurance industry or a doctor or a dentist, you're handling HIPAA or PCI compliant information, you're going to be paying a lot more because the risk is higher. Because if you get hacked, there's going to be compliance fines involved. Okay. And this is the other part that we're talking about now at the end is what are the liabilities? What are the risks? What's the compliance side of it? Oh, wow. So a lot of people don't realize that in IT now, compliance, emails, things like that, 7 years. It used to be 2. 7 years is expected retention. Just like any kind of tax document or any kind of document that's legal in the States now, 7 years. if you do not have a retention policy that matches this and you get involved in a lawsuit where they do e-discovery and things have been discovered, deleted, or removed from the system prior to that, that's considered construction or what do they call that? I can't think of it now. It's obstruction of justice. Basically, they're saying you destroyed evidence willfully against the law. So you can actually be found in contempt of court for that and fined. Okay. The second thing is you face liabilities for both liability and third-party liability from anybody that's affected by you. So if I'm Joe Plumber and I do business with another business and that business gets hacked as a result of information I had in my system, I now have third-party liability and can be sued by that company. So there's liabilities that come out of that. The biggest thing that most people don't get is the compliance side of it. Most people don't realize, like we do a lot of business with dentists and private practice doctors. All right. The dentist didn't realize that they know they have to be HIPAA compliant. They didn't know about the 7-year thing. They didn't know about retention. And they didn't realize that if they got hacked and any of that information was ever sold and it got back to the end user, that they were liable. So they're liable for $5,000 per breach of each account that was leaked.
Oh my gosh, she's going to lose her house.
Well, and this is like payroll taxes. You don't get out of this by claiming bankruptcy. Whoever is the signer on the line for the company is the one who's ultimately responsible for those fees. So yeah, it can ruin your personal life. So it is very important for businesses to protect themselves and to prevent these things from happening in the first place. And the stupid thing is it is all preventable now. You could not say it was preventable 3 years ago. You couldn't come out and say you could prevent this. But nowadays, with the stuff that's out there, the products that are out there, it is now preventable. What's a little different about our company is we brought enterprise level product from like Cynet and Deep Instinct, and we brought that down into the micro business level, like small companies, 5, 10, 15 size companies. You don't have to license hundreds of endpoints at a time or thousands. So we've kind of brought that into the micro market, and that's what's a little different about our company.